geoscientists have some basic knowledge of it, so I will not go into much detail. But whatever is possible at national and international level, what are the things I will try to just give in brief. So, what are the different sources of energy? The first and presently mostly popular and widely used are coal, petroleum, natural gas, and coal bed methane. They are in the present scenario. Then alternate energies are hydropower, nuclear, wind, and solar. They are also now presently widely used. Tidal, and last is geothermal. Geothermal is used in many countries. The new technologies which are emerging are biodiesel, biomass, hydrogen cells, and electrical vehicles. Electrical vehicles are now already on the road. So this is the chart which shows that what are the renewable energies we are mostly using in the world. They are first is hydropower, second is solar, third is wind power, then biomass, and finally geothermal. These are the popular alternative renewable energies used. Where we get the geothermal energies? The geothermal fields in the all over the world, they are mostly associated or located along the plate boundaries. Wherever there are two plates in contact or in collision, or where there are tectonic, we can say boundaries, we are getting the geothermal fields. Most of the geothermal fields are associated in the west coast of USA. Then along the Pacific ring, that is Philippines, Japan's, then the boundary of Asia and Arabian plate, that is Pacific and Arabian, we can say Indian plate, that is Java, Sumatra, Indonesia, New Zealand, and all along the Himalayan belt also. So these are the main locales of the geothermal fields distributed all over the world. But why they are associated with, we can say, the plate boundaries? The reason is very simple. I don't have to explain actually the subduction to everybody, but wherever there are two plate boundaries colliding and there is a subduction zone, when one plate is being subducted under the other, the plate which being subducted is ultimately goes down because of higher heat gradient, higher heat content at the subsurface, and because of dynamo-thermal mechanism, the plate starts melting, the rock lithotypes start melting at depth. Ultimately, it is completely converted into lava. The magma starts coming up along the conduits and give rise to the volcano. This volcano is a part of, we can say, the major geothermal heat distribution center. So wherever there are volcanoes, if there are fluids associated with it, water circulation is there, we are getting the geothermal fields. The second one is in the tectonic zones or along the boundaries or boundaries of two different lithoid units, or where there are rift valley, just like our boundaries, Gondwana faults, drift faults, etc. They provide to the water for very deep circulation. That water goes to the deep circulation, quite a depth. We get some hot water, so rock source, like suppose there is a granite injection, or there are some sort of we can say igneous rocks which are producing heat either because of dynamo-thermal mechanism or because of heat content or because of we can say atomic minerals present there. They start generating, dissipating or radiating the heat. That heat is collected by the deep circulated water, and ultimately this water finds source, some fracture zone, etc., to come to the surface and starts a geothermal hot spring area, and it is a beginning of a geothermal system and geothermal field. Then there is a third type, which we call as a hot dry rock area. This is mostly occurring in places where there are deep granitic injections. Deep granites are exposed in the mostly in Australia, etc., where we don't have a water circulation system, proper water circulation system developed because of lack of porosity and permeability. But heat is there in the subsurface. That is called as a dry hard rock geothermal system. In this case, what we do, water is pumped from the surface to fracture this particular or to reach
You have become unmute. You have become muted, sir. Please unmute yourself.
Okay. Now,
It's all right. It's all right. You have again gone mute. You have again gone mute, sir. You have been muted. I don't know. Please unmute, sir. Yes, it's all right.
okay.
Yes.
So now where I was exactly when you last listened?
This hot dry rock, sir.
Okay. So hard dry rock. This is a actually mostly granite dominated area where there is heat generated maybe because of granite injections at quite depth, maybe 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, but there is no conduit or water circulation or required porosity or permeability for continuous water circulation and correction of this heat. In such case, the heat is there in the deep interior of the earth, but it doesn't reach to the surface by some mechanism. There we are drilling deep boreholes 5 kilometers, 6 kilometers, then inject the water below, and that water collects the heat, and that hot water is brought to the surface by pumps, and ultimately it is used for the different purposes, including electricity generation and other direct uses. That is called as a hot dry rock geothermal system. So if we are going anywhere, what are the manifestations of the geothermal area or geothermal field? The first most important manifestation is hot spring and emission of steam. All the geothermal fields will be having hot springs. Hot spring means a spring which is having temperature of more than 10 degrees centigrade than the overall, we can say, ambient temperature of atmospheric temperature of that area. So hot springs are mostly associated with steam emission also. And whenever hot springs are coming up, automatically there are some dissolved minerals in it, those because of water rock interaction, and those dissolved minerals get deposited along the hot spring. So this is a geothermal field in Japan, and we are seeing here steam emission, and this yellow precipitate, that is a sulfur precipitated along the hot spring area. This is also another view of hot spring. We are seeing water discharge as well as the steam emission, and this is the marshy land. This marshy land is also quite hot, and it's always dangerous to step into such type of marshy land near any geothermal hot spring. This is the steam emission in Iceland. Iceland is a very important geothermal area, and in this area there are a number of hot springs, and there is so much of profuse emission of hot water and along with that steam that this looks like a, we can say, continuous steam dominated area. So this is another field from the Iceland. One more most important manifestation of geothermal, suppose there is no steam, but we are getting some other manifestations like marshy land. One more important manifestation is the mud pool. Whenever the water is not able to reach directly to the surface, near subsurface in soil areas, it gets the steam gets we can say cooled, and the steam heated, it condenses and it finds way to the surface. When it finds way to the surface, it have interaction with the nearby, we can say, soil, etc. And ultimately it forms a marshy land and mud. And the steam heated water becomes a sort of marshy mud, and through this mud there starts emission of steam. This is called as, and this continuous emission from the steam is called as a mud pool or mud volcano. And such type of mud volcano indicates that there is a geothermal area in nearby, but it is concealed one. There is no direct conduit to the hot water in this geothermal area. This is a hot spring which we have seen in the Leh Ladakh. The hot water here comes through the, we can say, the crevasses in the rock type, and there is a deposition of silica along the hot spring margin. The second most important manifestation of geothermal hot spring is deposition of silica. The hot water, when it reaches underground and starts coming up, there is a, we can say, this period of stagnation there, and during this period and while coming up to the surface, it has a very deep water rock interaction. Some of the minerals like feldspars, silica, etc. get dissolved in this. Feldspars are altered, and when it reaches the surface, because there is a loss of temperature and loss of pressure, the excess amount is deposited near the hot spring vent, and such deposition is mostly of silica and calcite, and we are seeing such a huge silica deposit in hot springs of New Zealand. Besides that, there is secondary mineral deposition like clay or borax, but mostly altered feldspar, they form the montmorillonite and illite, and that is also deposited along the flow of the stream. And such type of deposition is found in the hot springs of Leh, Chumatang and Tuga over quite a wide area. Here, these white patches, they are all the secondary mineral deposition in this area. This is the third and most important manifestation, that is a geyser. Yellowstone National Park is having faithful geyser, and that gives regular emission of hot water and steam. And this is, besides that, having a cone, as we can see here, that is the cone formed because of silica sinter deposition. And other mineral deposition is here. Some yellow patches we can see. There are some actually arsenic deposits also there. And it's not visible here. But such type of secondary mineral deposition is always observed along the hot spring or geyser area of any geothermal field. So what is geothermal area? We are getting hot water, but how it forms area? Geothermal area energy is actually site specific, and that is why it is useful in remote areas, and that is why it can be used as a substitute to the thermal area, thermal power. Second thing, it is renewable. It's a continuous supply area, and there are techniques now which can recirculate and recharge the geothermal field, and that is why it is a renewable area also. It is an environmental friendly area, power generation. It is an environmental friendly energy, and we can see what is the impact of environment if we start geothermal energy in some next slides. It is technologically feasible, and it has one great advantage. Depending on the availability of the resource and the requirement, the production units are available from 100 kilowatt to 10 megawatt size also. So whatever is your source, you can utilize it to the optimum as per requirement and as per availability. Geothermal resources, they are actually classified into three parts. That is two-phase resource. A geothermal spring or geothermal, we can say field, which is having hot water and steam combined, like we can say in Puga area, that is called as a hot water and steam combined, that is two-phase resource. A geothermal field which is having a single phase, that is only steam or only hot water, that is called as a single phase one. And actually the Yellowstone National Park is, at most of the places, it is a single phase reservoir geothermal field, because mostly it gives steam, and at places we are getting hot water along with it whenever the steam gets condensed. So that is because of high temperature, it is called as a single phase geothermal resource. And there is a dry phase, what we have seen, hot dry rock resource, that is called as a dry phase geothermal field. Now we are getting temperatures even up to 400 degrees centigrade in the geothermal field, but the uses and its utility varies from the temperature, and the actually production techniques also vary with the temperature. That is why they are classified as a high potential geothermal fields, where the temperature is more than 200 degrees, 50 degrees centigrade. Then intermediate enthalpy or potential geothermal field, that is 125 degrees to 250 degrees centigrade. And low temperature geothermal fields, low enthalpy geothermal fields, they are less than 125 degrees centigrade. Now, though these are the different classifications and types of geothermal field, different type of geothermal areas, they are utilized, they are put into production for various purposes, mainly in the USA, Italy, Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, Turkey, Mexico, China. New Zealand is one major place, Iceland and Kenya. And there are now more than 40 other countries which are using geothermal energy directly or indirectly. So if we are finding geothermal field, what are the basic, we can say, exploration techniques for that? The exploration techniques are similar actually. Geological mapping to delineate the geothermal surface area, then finding out the structure there, fold or mostly faulting and fault zones, etc. The cross faulting. Then sampling of the area, geochemical survey, that is sampling of surface water, subsurface water, hot water, spring water, and then sampling, we can say, the thermal survey. Thermal survey is the thermal gradient survey in geothermal area, near surface and down the borehole also. It is supported by the geophysical survey, mostly resistivity and empty survey, to know the subsurface configuration of the structure as well as the lithology. And empty survey is mostly used to have knowledge about the deep, we can say, reservoir, that is 2 to 3 kilometers area below the surface area, and which helps us in actually knowing the extent of the, we can say, structure as well as the geothermal hot water extent. After knowing all these things, there is finally exploration by the drilling. After exploration by the drilling, there is well testing, temperature survey, pressure logging, temperature and pressure logging during the well survey, then fracture zones, etc. They are also, we can say, during the borehole logging, they are measured, they are located, and then flow measurement at different temperatures, different depths, they are also measured. And even water sampling is also done at different places to know the quality of water, which varies from the depth. With all these things, we know ultimately the subsurface structure, and it leads to the assessment of the resource, the possible enthalpy, we can say, temperatures of the resource, temperature, pressure conditions of the resource, and then it leads to the assessment, that is possible potential of the resource for different uses. Ultimately, based on all these data, a power plant is planned, and the direct uses, possible direct uses also are planned. What are the basics we use there? In the basic is analysis of hot water, and that analysis of hot water we use for classification of the water. in this Piper diagram, there are different diagrams used here for analysis, classifying this water. It is just to give in the brief, I am giving this Piper diagram. In Piper diagram, in this quadrangle, which is a sodium and chloride rich quadrangle, any water falling in this quadrangle is mostly called as a geothermal water. There are some waters which fall in these boundaries or nearby. So they are actually the mixed waters. So geothermal water which falls in this calcium sulfate quadrangle or sodium bicarbonate quadrangle, they may be the geothermal water, but they are mixed geothermal waters, and they have that way they are away from the source and they have less of the enthalpy as compared to the sodium chloride waters. So once we get the geochemistry of the water, the next thing is during the borehole drilling, after drilling, there is a logging of the borehole. The logging of the borehole, besides knowing fracture zones, etc., is mostly temperature and pressure logged. There are special techniques for that, and the temperature and pressure log is done for the whole of the borehole to know the fracture zones, the incoming of water, the outgoing of water, means inlet of the water in the borehole, outlet of the water in the borehole, and accordingly the production zones also can be decided. This is a very simple borehole log of TAT 23 from Tatapani geothermal field. Here we can see this is a pressure log. The pressure is continuously increasing with the depth. It's almost normal pressure gradient, we can say, slightly deviating from that. But temperature log shows that static temperature when the borehole is closed, it's increasing, and when it is a flowing temperature, it's almost 110 degrees centigrade continuous. So the water source is continuous from the bottom, and there is no in between mingling, or there is no in between mixing of the water. So we are getting a continuous water source of the same temperature. At the depth of 340 meters, there is some inlet of cold water. So temperature has fallen down by 1 degree centigrade here, and such type of variation in the thermal log are useful while planning the production zones or planning the borehole casings, etc. The third most important is, based on all the data, thermal gradient data, then borehole data, we have to prepare at first 2D plan where we get the thermal profile of the subsurface. The thermal profile of the subsurface, wherever there is a high profile nearer to the surface, high temperature zones nearer to the surface, they are more useful for the productions, and accordingly the product area can be targeted for the production. This section shows the thermal anomaly zones in Tatapani, and if we see here, this red part, that is shows temperature of more than 110 degrees centigrade, and which is other parts that is no doubt yellow is showing less than 70, but as we come up, we say that there is a gradual decrease in the temperature. So this red plug, which is showing more than 110 degrees centigrade, this is the main zone of the geothermal area. This is also a second zone of the geothermal area, but here the temperature means the hot water horizon is at much deeper depth. Here, wherever there is a red means hot water plume, the geothermal area is at much shallower depth. So this is also useful in planning the production. Based on all this data, the geothermal reservoir configuration is prepared, and that is the subsurface configuration of the geothermal field in depth as well as in we can say horizontal extent in 3D is prepared, and then it can be very much used for prediction of the borehole, we can say the temperatures where we can get production planning and borehole planning also, exploration. Once all this thing is over, we have completed the drilling, we have got the hot water. Then depending on the temperatures, if the temperatures are more than 180 degrees centigrade, the production of it can be used for the power plant, electricity generation, and the production of we can say the power from hot water of temperatures 180 degrees centigrade or more is much easier, because we put it into the separators here. Steam is separated away. The separated steam at the high pressure is used to drive the turbine, which is connected to the generator, and the electricity is transmitted to the nearby stations. The hot water, the steam after from the turbine, which loses its temperature, is either re-injected in the reservoir, or it is used for some other direct heat uses. But when the temperature is less than 180 degrees centigrade, mostly around 150 degrees centigrade, the direct separation of the steam is not much beneficial. So in this case, we have a heat exchanger where organic fluid with less boiling point, which has a low boiling point, is used during in the heat exchanger. The heat is exchanged, the organic fluid is vaporized, and that vapor is used to drive the turbine and generate the electricity. In this case, no doubt, there is, we can say, the less efficiency of power generation, but there is a benefit that particularly in interior areas where temperatures are less, still we can generate the power from this binary cycle power plant using heat exchanger, and the hot water again can be utilized for different either direct heat uses or. So we are having here what we call as a binary cycle power plant. In this power plant, what happens, the temperature, when the temperature is less, the heat exchanger utilizes the low temperature, we can say fluid, to evaporate it, and then this is used to drive the turbine as a generator. This electricity is generated by using boiling and vaporizing low temperature fluid, like we can say ethanol or some carbofluorides, and the rest of the water is again re-injected in the subsurface. I hope we have reached up to this place.
Yeah.
Now, these are the basically two power, we can say, generation methods from the geothermal water. That is a flash steam power plant where direct steam is utilized, separated steam is utilized to generate the electricity. And what the second is called as a binary cycle power plant, where the low temperature water is utilized to evaporate the low temperature fluid, organic fluid, and that organic fluid is used to drive the turbine and generate the electricity. Now, the basic purpose of all this thing is generation of electricity. And when we generate the electricity, there is a major problem, that is the emission of CO2. When we compare the emission of CO2, presently we are going about reduction of carbon. So when we compare this with the other, we can say, power generation methods, coal is approximately producing 1000 grams equivalent carbon dioxide per kilowatt hour per unit. Oil is producing 840 grams CO2 equivalent per unit, whereas geothermal uses around 45 grams of CO2 it emits per unit. So as compared to coal or other, we can say, the fossil fuels, it is much more economically and environmental friendly electricity generation method. The second most important part is the cost of generation of the electricity. Actually, it varies from place to place, and availability of the, we can say, the site, and overall, we can say, the production capacity. it's mostly much less geothermal production. We can say electricity generation is much cost is much less in places like USA, where it's available in very large quantity, or New Zealand, or even Indonesia. But here is a comparative cost, and if we see the geothermal power generation maximum cost is around 120 cents per unit. That is the maximum cost, whereas the coal and other coal is 140 cents per unit, and gas, etc., they are much higher. If we have a continuous and large geothermal source, then the cost of production of geothermal energy is around 80 cents per unit. That is, we in present position in India, we can say around 6 rupees per unit. This shows the cost comparison along with the different sources. Coal, that is coal with this is in dollars per unit. So for coal it is $0.12. For nuclear it's $0.09. For geothermal it varies depending on the technology used, we can say the capacity of the power plant and the methodology used. Suppose it is a binary cycle power plant, the cost of generation will be certainly higher, but it varies from $0.45 per unit to $0.1 per unit. So even if we see commercially, if there is a good geothermal resource, it is commercially viable. What are the worldwide geothermal generation capacities at the present? The maximum geothermal energy is produced in USA, that is around 3,700 megawatts. Then Indonesia, 2,300 megawatts. And most of the countries like Philippines, Turkey, Kenya, they are producing around 1,000 megawatts of electricity. These are the major countries producing geothermal energy. Besides the electricity generation, the most important use of geothermal energy is in, we can say, direct, what we call as a direct heat uses. That is, it contains aquaculture, then refrigeration, then space heating, then greenhousing, etc., etc. And this is the chart showing direct heat utilization of geothermal energy worldwide. The most of the geothermal energy is used for heat pumps and space heating, and it is quite popular, particularly in cold countries or countries like New Zealand, even in USA also, northern part of the USA, California and Greenland, Iceland, etc. What are the environmental issues? There are, though it is called as an environmental friendly energy, the hot water contains chloride, fluorine, and arsenic mostly. So chloride content is there is generally high chloride content in geothermal water, and fluorine also may be there. So if there is a high quantity of fluorine, the removal of fluorine and sometimes removal of arsenic are the major concerns. The silica deposition, if it is a high temperature geothermal water, the silica deposition and calcite deposition, that is also to be taken care of, particularly during power generation. And there are some secondary products like sulfur, borax, cesium, etc. They can be taken, no doubt, treated and taken out as a secondary byproducts. The important gas emission from the geothermal energy is CO2, SO2, NO2, and hydrogen, and even helium and argon. So most profuse emission is mostly CO2 and SO2. Sometimes that has to be separated. As far as the area where we are having geothermal fields, the most important is land deformation, because sometimes the land may become very marshy, and subsidence sometimes during we can say excessive or continuous use of geothermal, withdrawal of geothermal water, production of the geothermal water in power plant areas. So these are some of the environmental issues associated with the geothermal energy. What are the important uses of geothermal energy? The most important use is a power generation, that is a power plant having temperature of more than 200 degrees centigrade. Actually, more than 150 or 125 degrees centigrade is also used, particularly in binary cycles, and more than 180 degrees centigrade is used for direct power generation. The other uses are food processing, that is temperature of more than around 100 degrees centigrade can be used for that. Then in industrial uses like timber washing, sericulture, paper and pulp industry, etc., the temperature of 80 degrees to 140 degrees centigrade water can be used for that. Then greenhouse is temperature of 50 to 80 degrees centigrade is used in greenhouse cultivation. Aquaculture, that is fish rearing, then crocodile farming, etc., the temperature of around 60 degrees or less can be used for such purposes. And most important use is tourism, spa and swimming pools, etc. And besides that, besides spa, the geothermal is sometimes it is known to be sulfur rich. There is some colloidal sulfur present also. Most of the geothermal water you get sulfurous smell. So they are used for the cure of skin, some of the skin diseases also. Besides, particularly in places like Puga, we get some minerals like some elements like sulfur, cesium, and deposition of borax also. They are byproducts. And helium is many times associated with the geothermal water. And a place like Bakreshwar, we are in Puga Valley, we are able to get helium also in quite a substantial amount. So these are the important uses of the geothermal water, geothermal resource. These are some of the photographs showing different uses. This is a aquaculture pond. These different ponds show different temperatures, and the fish of different varieties are rare there, depending on the temperature and quality of the water. This is important place and very common use. Particularly, this is a photograph from Iceland, and this is used for hot water bath. People are enjoying as a tourist spot. Greenhousing is a very important use, particularly in the cold countries. And depending on the temperature and we can say the composition of the water, it is used for different varieties of the products like tomatoes, cauliflowers, vegetables, and even floriculture. So this is also one of the major uses of geothermal water of temperatures, we can say less temperatures. This is a greenhouse which was experimental, which was done in the Chumathang by GSI long ago. The most important use of geothermal energy is the space heating, that is cooling and heating, particularly in northern hemisphere. The geothermal water can be used for space heating. When the temperatures outside are minus, the geothermal water is pumped and there is a water circulation in the, we can say, any room or apartment, and that is heated. The cold water is again recirculated in the subsurface, and the system goes on and cooling and heating. Actually, it is mostly used for heating. So geothermal water has one important use, that is a space heating. This is a we can say photo from Japan, where the hotel is using geothermal water for heating purpose. These are the heat exchangers, and this is a room quite cozily kept at the cozy temperature, whereas the outside temperature is actually much less, maybe in minus. Now, what we can do in India? What is the position of India regarding the geothermal? Our power plant power consumption, rather power capacity, presently installed capacity is 3,92,000 megawatts, of which coal is maximum more than 2 lakhs. Gas diesel is 25,000. Hydro is 46,000 megawatts. Nuclear is 6,700 megawatts, and there is quite a spurt in wind and solar, that is around 88,000 megawatts. Geothermal capacity for different uses was postulated by Dr. Ravi Shankar to be around 10,000 megawatts. And I think, unfortunately, though there is a lot of work done by Geological Survey of India, we are yet to tap this resource in India. There are efforts to tap this resource in India. So where are the geothermal fields in India? Geothermal fields in India are in Himalayan belt, then in northeastern region, Andaman Nicobar Island, West Coast area, Cambay Graben area, Son Narmada Tapi area, this is one of the important area, Godavari province, Mahanadi province, and South Indian Cretonic province, mostly this is peninsular area. This geothermal fields distributed here, they are shown here, that is the Himalayan province. This is Naga Luksai, that is northeastern part of India. This is a Son Narmada Tapi lineament, and this extends from almost west coast of India to nearly east coast of India along the Narmada Valley. Along the west coast of India, north of Bombay to Ratnagiri, this belt is also geothermally, we can say, resource potential is there. There are 18 different localities having hot springs localities, and they are also useful for development. Then Godavari Valley, this is mostly Manguru and Bhadrachalam fields. They are also having hot water areas. And then there are isolated hot springs in the central part of Peninsular Nice and southern India. We'll just discuss in a brief the most important geothermal fields in India. That is, the most important along Himalayan border is Chumathang and Puga. These two fields are located almost 180 degrees, 40 to 80 kilometers away from Leh, and they are showing granitic basement there, having high temperatures. In Puga Chumathang area, that is located at the elevation of 440 meters, and the stretch of the, particularly in Puga, is more than 3 kilometers, and the hot spring temperature is maximum is 84 degrees centigrade at Puga and 87 degrees centigrade at Chumathang, which is near boiling point at that area. The geothermal indicators, based on the hot water analysis of the hot water, they show temperature of 180 degrees centigrade to 260 degrees centigrade in Puga and Chumathang area. So there is no doubt variation by different methods, but the temperature is certainly more than 200 degrees centigrade in this area. GSI has drilled 34 boreholes. Of these, 17 boreholes have shown hot water flow, and maximum temperature of 123 degrees centigrade was recorded in the flowing borehole. And at Chumathang, a flowing borehole has shown hot water discharge of 120 degrees centigrade. So enough of temperature we are getting at the shallow level here. This now has taken up for this particular Puga area has been taken up for further exploration and installation of at least presently 1 megawatt power plant by the ONGC. Besides that, previously some research activities was done by GSI, and extraction of cesium from the water using RF resin was successfully completed in association with the DARC. The space heating, hutments and poultry farming was also experimented at Puga and Chumathang. This is the photograph of the Puga area, where we can see the geyseric flow from the boreholes at the Puga. There, some of the boreholes are still showing discharge. This is the recently borehole drilled at Chumathang area, and it is having a flow of 120 degrees centigrade. And we can see the geyseric discharge here also. The next is in Parvati Valley area. that is Manikaran Castle area, that is at 117-meter height. The hot springs of 33 degrees to 96 degrees centigrade are reported, and indicated reservoir temperature of up to 186 to 202 degrees centigrade are found here. This area was also GSI tried some experimental basis utilization. One ammonia absorption refrigeration plant was installed at Manikaran, and one 5 kilowatt binary cycle power plant was also run successfully in association with National Aeronautical Laboratory. But unfortunately, both were destroyed during landslide. Now this is a major tourist attraction place, as well as hot water is used for food processing purposes at Manikaran. This is the flow of Manikaran. This is a photograph of Manikaran area, where we can see the steam coming out from the hot spring area. Next is the Tapoban area, that is in Uttarakhand. Here also the hot springs of temperature up to 65 degrees centigrade are reported. 6 boreholes were drilled, in which we got temperature of 90 degrees centigrade, and estimated reservoir temperature, that is down dip temperature based on the water composition, is around 145 degrees centigrade. And deposition of aragonite, that is calcite, is observed along hot springs. That indicates that certainly this is an active geothermal field. Here also experimental greenhouse was tried, but now they are not presently in operation. In central part of India, we have different geothermal fields. This Tapi Basin, Salbadi, Anoni Samoni, and Tatapani, they are associated with the Son Narmada Valley lineament. And Ganeshpuri, Unavare Khed, and Rajapur, etc., they are associated with the west coast province of the geothermal areas. Tatapani geothermal field actually is one of the most important geothermal area in the central India. It is in Chhattisgarh state. It shows hot springs of 52 degrees to 97 degrees centigrade. Here 26 boreholes were drilled, out of which 5 boreholes are in production position, and they produce water of more than 100 degrees centigrade on the surface. The boreholes were shallow, they are 150-meter depth only, but individual borehole is still flowing with the where the flow varies from 230 liters per minute to 300 liters per minute, and some of the boreholes, they are still in flowing conditions. Lot of work was done here, and borehole logging has indicated the maximum temperature of 112 degrees centigrade at the depth of 200 meter in this borehole, that is TAT 23 borehole, which is still in flowing condition here. The shut-in pressure is 0.4, and bottom pressure is 34 bars, but the flow pressure is around 0.6 bars. So with all the parameters, if we see, this is a very active geothermal field. The reservoir temperature here is estimated to be around 160 to 190 degrees centigrade based on the silica geothermometry as well as the sodium potassium method. Different organizations have postulated different capacity for this geothermal field. The present power potential was estimated to be 11 megawatt by ONGC up to 1500 meter depth, and around 30 megawatt by Sarolkar up to the 2000 meter depth based on the present available data. The deep drilling is required here to prove the actual reservoir potential. So these are some of the photographs of Tatapani geothermal field. These are the flowing wells and the steam emission we can see. This is a borehole which is discharged in the discharge tank for flow measurement as well as the proper discharge of the hot water. And this is the borehole TAT 23, which is showing a sprout. This reaches up to the height of almost 15 meters, more than 15 meters, and it is continuously observed for last 20 to 30 years whenever we open the borehole. Another one is important geothermal field is Anoni Samoni. Anoni Samoni, that is at Pachmadi area in the Hoshangabad district of Madhya Pradesh. We are getting here hot springs also along a, we can say, streamlet. Hot springs of up to 45 degrees centigrade are reported. Actually, GS has drilled 2 to 3 boreholes here. One of the borehole was quite deep, nearly 700 meters deep, and it started discharging water of 55 degrees centigrade at around 60 LPM. And this flow is still continuous for last more than 20 years. This has one more important aspect here, that is inflammable gas. That gas emission was observed in the borehole, which contains 81% of methane and 17% of nitrogen. This gaseous activity is also continuous, and this is another aspect for utilization of this borehole for, we can say, production purposes or energy purposes. Indicated reservoir temperature here is comparatively less, but being a quite interior one, and Madhya Pradesh being a, we can say, coal rich state, this is still used basically as a tourist attraction only. The West Coast area is a very important geothermal area extending 300 kilometers. Hot springs of 33 degrees centigrade to 72 degrees centigrade at Unavare Khed, that is in Ratnagiri district, are reported here. Most of the hot springs, they are from the Deccan Trap basalt, and so they are basically associated with some fracture zones or fault zones. The important springs are Sativali, Ganeshpuri, Unavare Khed, which is having maximum temperature 72 degrees centigrade on the surface, and Tural. And efforts were put to establish some power generation binary cycle demonstration power plant at Tural. The efforts are still on. The indicated reservoir temperature, that is the down deep reservoir temperature based on the aqueous geothermometry, that is based on the water composition, is up to 140 degrees centigrade in this area. So this is a, we can say, low enthalpy geothermal field, but it can be utilized for binary cycle power generation as well as other direct uses. Presently, it is mostly used for the holiday resort and tourist attraction. The other important geothermal field is Godavari Valley in Managuri area, where the temperature of on the surface is comparatively less, 83 degrees centigrade to 44 degrees centigrade. It is in Kottagudem district. Some boreholes were drilled also there, which indicated 46 degrees centigrade of water. GSI has recently drilled 8 boreholes to investigate this area in detail, and the temperature of maximum discharge 81 degrees centigrade was reported here. The flow is around 600 LPM. Based on this data, particularly in collaboration with the GSI, Singareni Collieries Company Limited has planned a 20 kilowatt binary cycle demonstration plan at Managuru based on the geothermal energy. The reservoir temperature is estimated here minimum 120 degrees centigrade, which may extend up to 150 degrees centigrade. The other area is Surajkund in Hazaribagh, that not much work has been presently done here. The active area where work is going on is in Gujarat. Gujarat has hot springs at Unnai 55 degrees centigrade, Dholera around 45 degrees centigrade, Tulsi Sham around 60 degrees centigrade, and Tuva at 60 degrees centigrade, 63 degrees centigrade. The most important Tulsi Sham area that comes under wildlife sanctuary, that is why we are not able to do any work there, substantial work there. But the PDPU, that is Petroleum Deen Dayal Upadhyay Petroleum University, Gandhinagar, has put one combined solar and geothermal energy use. Means geothermal water is additionally heated by the solar energy, and a hot binary cycle power plant of 10 kilowatt is put there as a demonstration plant. It is still in operation. One of the most important geothermal area in east part, that is West Bengal, is a Bakreshwar. It is a very popular tourist attraction place, and there are number of hot springs located at different places, important being Bakreshwar, Tantloi, Dalahi and Palasi. Bakreshwar has number of kunds, we can say tanks of hot springs ranging in temperature from 42 degrees centigrade to 70 degrees centigrade, and with cumulative discharge of 780 LPM. There are number of tanks and there is a continuous water discharge here, and this particular place is used by tourists for we can say bathing purposes, etc. And Tantloi has 70 degrees centigrade maximum temperature. But this Bakreshwar and Tantloi has one very distinctive character, that they have profuse gas emission. The gas has been analyzed, and up to 92 degrees, 92% nitrogen is found, and up to 3.17% of helium is reported from this area. And this hot water, particularly all these places, pools there, they are utilized to recover and extract the helium from this water. And Department of Atomic Energy had put one project also here for the extraction of helium from hot water of Bakreshwar. The reservoir temperature is estimated to be maximum up to 174 degrees centigrade by various different methods. Presently, this area is mostly used for extraction of helium, and then it is one of the major tourist attraction places, as well as because of there is one Bakreshwar temple. It is not besides tourist attraction, it is a place of temple also. This is the kund which is at Bakreshwar. It's quite a large area and it's well protected. We have some other fields in India which are not very common and very popular, but they are still useful. One of the most important is there are a number of boreholes drilled by the ONGC in Cambay Basin for oil and gas investigation. Some of them were producing also, and some of these boreholes have recorded temperature of more than 120 degrees centigrade. And ONGC is now actively considering a project to utilize this temperature for other purposes like electricity generation or production of hot water for other direct heat uses, or binary cycle method electricity power plant, etc. And that is under quite active consideration. Some of the dry and abandoned boreholes, they are also under study, because some of the boreholes have reported temperature of up to 140 degrees centigrade at the depth of 2.5 to 3 kilometers. Besides these, hot springs are reported at Surajkund in Bihar with temperature of 88 degrees centigrade, Meghalaya, that is Jakram, Assam, Garampani, and Arunachal Pradesh, which have temperature of 35 degrees to 54 degrees centigrade, and the reservoir, that is down deep temperature, is expected to be 100 degrees centigrade. We have some hot springs in Odisha also at Atri, Garampani, and Tatapani, and they also need further studies for utilization purposes. What are the possible uses of geothermal hot springs which we find in India? In Western countries or in New Zealand or USA, they have a number of different uses, including power production. But what are the possible uses based on our present study? The possible uses are geothermal power plant at Puga and Chumathang, that may be a directly steam-based power plant, and at Tatapani, Manikaran and West Coast, and presently at Manguru also, that can be a binary cycle power plant. The greenhouse cultivation, particularly in the areas where there is a lot of, we can say, low temperature or minus temperature or snowfall in areas in Himalayan belt, as well as the central India, that is mostly in Puga, Manikaran, Tapovan, and part of the NR. Greenhouse cultivation is very much useful, and it is feasible also. The cold storage in places like West Coast, that is refrigeration plants in West Coast, that is near Bombay or Gujarat, where there is a lot of we can say cultivation and agriculture production and food processing industry. Anoni Samoni, that is Pachmadi area, Managuru and Bakreshwar. They are useful for the cold storage refrigeration plants. The food processing is possible in Gujarat, Bakreshwar area, at Tatapani also, because Tatapani is having a lot of sericulture as well as we can say agriculture product which can be utilized for food processing, and Manikaran. The most important use of low or any type of geothermal energy hot spring is tourism. And most of the areas which we see, whether it's in Gujarat, whether it's Ganeshpuri in, we can say, West Coast, or Joshimath, or Badrinath, they are the hot spring areas where temples are constructed, and they are used as one of the most important tourist places. Besides that, the hot water contains generally colloidal sulfur, and it has usually sulfurous smell. So it is used for the skin cure as a skin cure centers. This can be used at Puga, Tatapani, Ganeshpuri, and most of the hot springs are used as a spa centers also. One of the other use of the geothermal, because geothermal water goes under the deep circulation in the subsurface, it has a lot of water of interaction, and it collects minerals, means dissolved minerals or elements, and some of the gases also along with it. That is why rare mineral recovery is possible, that is sulfur, arsenic, cesium, and borax. Such type of elements and minerals, they are very much easily extractable from the geothermal water. That is possible in Puga, Tatapani, Manguru, and Bakreshwar. And helium is one of the most important gas which we can get from the geothermal hot spring areas. What are the constraints, main constraints for the development of geothermal energy in India? The most important and main constraint is coal is very cheap in India, and the cost of geothermal power generation or project is generally compared with the coal or solar power plant in India, which is much less. At present, around 35 crores rupees investment is required per megawatt for the development of geothermal energy. But this actually includes the exploration cost. When we go for a thermal power plant, etc., the exploration cost for coal or mining cost is not included there. Here we are including the exploration cost also. That is why the investment is much higher. But the geothermal plant has much long life, 50 to 60 years or even more. The Ladder plant in Italy is working for more than 100 years. So in long term, the geothermal energy is profitable. And this particular point we have to hammer with our, we can say, the administration. When solar power was initially started, it was also very high cost energy. Later on, because of different developments and particularly high technology production of the solar panels, it has become cheap. But initially, Government of India was offering incentive nearly up to 50 rupees per unit. That is almost 20 years back or 15 years back. Later on, now presently there is no incentive for solar production, but it started with the government support. That type of government support and incentive is required for the geothermal energy to develop in India. And the policy for geothermal development is still awaited. This is one major requirement, because there is no policy on paper, and that is hampering actually the involvement of particularly foreign players, foreign companies in development of geothermal in India. What are the suggestions? The government incentive is required to offset the higher cost of exploration and the risk involved. There is always risk in geothermal drilling because the drilling is required to be 2 to 3 kilometers deep. And it's not, though geophysics or geochemistry may indicate that there is a good resource, there is always a sort of risk involved that the resource may not be up to the mark or up to the expectation. Though sometimes the resource is giving much higher production also, but this risk involved, and for that there is some incentive to be given by the government for the exploration purposes. The equipment and machinery required for geothermal exploration, and particularly in the development, that power plant, etc., is presently not easily available in India. We have to mostly import it. And there are, we can say, tariff decided by the different state governments for different power, that is wind power, solar power, thermal power, etc. That decision for geothermal is yet not taken by any of the states. So this is required because to offset the cost also, the production cost, we require how much tariff the government is giving and how much incentive the government is giving for geothermal power production. Government also should give liberal fund for installing at least initially demonstration geothermal power plant. So once a demonstration geothermal power plant is established either at Puga or Tatapani, automatically different players will take interest in the development of geothermal energy. So what are the other important aspects? The potential study. The Puga, Chumathang, Tatapani, etc. we had done exploration at the shallow level. For geothermal exploration is required up to 2 to 2.5 kilometers of the depth, so that the reservoir at the depth is so overall extent of reservoir and potential can be established there. So deep drilling is required. For that, government support is required. Incentive is required for the power production. As I told, the present cost of production of geothermal energy is higher than the coal or wind or even solar also. For that, presently, at initial stage, incentive is required from the government, so that once the commercial production starts, they can compete with these energy resources or energy types. Then public-private partnership and foreign direct investment must be encouraged, because particularly the geothermal plants and geothermal extraction technology is not available in India. We have to either import it from the USA or the New Zealand or Japan. For that, liberal private public partnership should be encouraged. And most important is, there are a number of places where hot springs are available, but people are not aware that this can be used other than the bathing purposes. So public awareness should be increased by continued propagation, arrangement of lectures, newspaper articles, and video documentaries, etc. So these are some of the things which require to be taken up in India for the development of geothermal energy. So the final conclusion is, we have shallow level reservoir potential established at Puga, Chumathang, Manikaran, Tapoban, Anoni, Samoni, Tatapani, and West Coast area, and which are useful for different geothermal energy utilization purposes. Most of the prospects here are around 125 to 150 degrees centigrade. Hence, direct uses, substitute uses, that we can say refrigeration, hot water uses, aquaculture, space heating, etc., can be utilized here. There is need to have national or international cooperation for the deep reservoir exploration, which is actually this geothermal exploration is similar to the oil exploration. The costs are higher and the equipment required is also specialized. That's why we require international cooperation. The most important is policy formulation and streamlining of the procedure required for attracting national and international cooperation in geothermal and deep level exploration to the 2000 meter or beyond. This is the requirement we expect from the state governments. State or central government should have some policy declared for with incentives for the development of geothermal energy, and efforts may be continued. In spite of all that, there are some organizations which are coming up to develop the geothermal energy. So efforts may be continued for installation of geothermal energy demonstration plants at Tatapani and Puga. These are some of the aspects which are required for the development of geothermal energy in India. The field is very vast. There are prospects. There are future is good if we start working right now. I have tried to put everything in a very brief as far as possible, and I hope it will bring knowledge to everybody. I am thankful to the institution of Geoscientist Odisha for giving me this opportunity, and particularly to Ranjan Mohanty for arranging this particular talk, online talk. I am sorry for the hitch in between the lecture, but there was some problem with the internet connectivity. I'm sorry for that. But I thank you, all of you, for very patient listening and your active participation in this online talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I think, is there any, now it is open for discussion. Anybody is